Hello, I am Marcus Hotaling. I'm the Counseling Center Director at Union College, a small private liberal arts and engineering school in upstate New York. I am also the past president of AUCCCD. Today, we are going to be talking about some common outside of the box operational issues that are likely to come up fairly often for you. You are bound to have students come in and request letters for academic or housing accommodations, emotional support animals, reduced course loads, and for our international student populations, this is especially important where there are specific rules regarding academic credits, and we will also address medical leaves. I'm going to talk about each one briefly, focusing on best practice. However, it is important to recognize that you are going to be running your counseling center, so you are free to go in a different direction than what I am going to talk about. But I strongly recommend that you speak with your supervisor and your legal counsel to make sure you are abiding by your institution's policies. Let's start with accommodations. As a new counseling center director, you will definitely be collaborating with your campus's accommodations or disability services office. You will find that, as a director, students navigating mental health challenges often seek support through both your center and accommodations. That means you're not just overseeing clinical care, you're also helping shape a coordinated student-centered approach to accessibility. So understand that while your counselors might not directly make accommodations decisions, they are often asked to provide documentation or clinical impressions that help to inform those decisions. Your role is to ensure that your team is trained to provide clear, ethical, and supportable statements that speak to the functional impact, not just diagnosis. In considering what you want to write or whether to write these types of letters, here are some factors to think about. First, most counseling centers are not diagnostic assessment providers. They provide short-term, treatment-focused services. In making a policy, state why the counseling center does or does not provide letters, referencing ethical, clinical, or institutional considerations. There may be centers that will not write letters, and they typically have policies that state the counseling center does not provide documentation for accommodations, but can refer students to appropriate providers for evaluation. If you go in this direction, think about your scope of services. Clarify what you can offer. Last, if you choose not to write letters, think about your referral process. Offer students a clear path to access evaluations through community providers, student health, a different office on campus, or an off-campus psychological service. At the end of the day, if you choose to not write these letters, remember that you are not saying no to the student. You are simply saying, how can we help you, and let's get you there. The next topic I would like to address is emotional support animals. This one comes up a lot and is very complex. The first thing to know is counseling centers are not required to provide ESA letters. In fact, many centers adopt the policy of not writing these letters, especially when the clinician has a dual role as both a provider and an evaluator. This is because writing a letter for housing or legal purposes shifts the therapist into the role of a disability evaluator, which can create an ethical or liability concern. However, there are centers that may want to write these letters for their students or might be being mandated by senior leadership. If this is the case, I would recommend that you reach out to the AUCCCD listserv to get advice and benchmarking data, and most importantly, speak to your institution's legal counsel for guidance. As a director, your first step is to clarify your center's policy. If you don't already have one, now is a good time to develop clear guidelines that protect both you and your staff, as well as your students. Many centers choose to refer students to outside providers who specialize in disability evaluations and ESA documentation. One great resource for this is going to HEMHA, HEMHA.org. That stands for the Higher Education Mental Health Alliance. It's a partner organization to AUCCCD. There you can find a free guide called Animals on Campus, Current Issues and Trends. It's a great starting point. I also want to point out that they also have great guides on postvention, teletherapy, so they're a great resource. Once you have your policy developed, communicate that policy clearly with your staff, with the campus housing office, and of course, with your students. You can still support the student clinically while also setting professional boundaries around documentation. The goal of this and defining the scope of practice is to ensure ethical practice, maintain your center's role as a therapeutic space, and still help students access appropriate resources. Another task that you are likely going to be asked is to handle various situational letters around academic areas. Counseling centers, and especially directors, are frequently called upon to write letters in support of students navigating academic challenges that intersect with their mental health or personal circumstances. The range of such letters is broad and reflects the diverse and often complex needs of our student populations. One common type of letter involves support for a late course withdrawal, often after an institutional deadline for which the course withdrawal has passed. These letters typically confirm that a student was experiencing significant mental health concerns that impeded their academic performance and their ability to engage with coursework during the relevant time period. With the release of information, the director may describe the nature and severity of the impairment and provide professional affirmation that a late withdrawal is a reasonable accommodation in light of the student's condition. Another frequent request pertains to rescheduling exams or receiving permission to take a makeup test. These letters may be prompted by acute episodes of anxiety, depression, trauma, or a psychiatric hospitalization that coincided with a scheduled assessment. The director may verify the legitimacy of the disruption and affirm that the student was unable to meet academic obligations due to clinical symptoms or treatment demands. You may also be asked to write letters to support a student's absence from class or exemption from attendance requirements. These are especially relevant for courses with strict attendance policies, participation-based grading, or labs. The letter typically explains that the student was unable to attend due to mental health reasons and asserts that flexibility in attendance is a reasonable and necessary adjustment. Requests for reduced course loads are also common, especially for students whose ongoing treatment plans or functional impairments necessitate a lighter academic burden. Letters in these cases often include a professional recommendation that a reduced course load is in the student's best interest for managing their mental health, and may also be used to support disability accommodations and maintain financial aid eligibility. Reduced course load, dropping below a certain number of credits, may impact financial aid, so a letter like this will allow them to continue to receive financial aid even if they are below full-time status. While some institutions will not require a letter for reduced course load for domestic students, any international student seeking reduced course loads will require a letter from counseling, health, a dean, or somebody on campus. Here's the issue regarding these requests. They are typically tied directly to immigration regulations. International students on F1 visas must maintain full-time enrollment unless they receive formal authorization for a reduced course load, usually coordinated through your school's International Student Support Services Office, or what's also known as a designated school official. If a student asks your staff for such a letter, your role is to help assess whether there is a legitimate psychological or medical basis for recommending a reduced load and to provide clear, accurate documentation if that is appropriate. So here are some tips. First, check your institution's protocol. Many schools have a specific form or a template that the counseling center completes in collaboration with the designated school official. It's important that your staff only provide letters when there's a documented mental health condition, specifically impacting the student's ability to function academically. Second, ensure confidentiality and consistency. All documentation should be based on clinical assessment, not just a request from the student, and it should avoid language that overstates or makes immigration-related guarantees. Lastly, partner with your International Student Support Office or your designated school official. Having a good relationship with these folks will make these cases smoother and ensure your center stays within legal and ethical boundaries. In all cases of requests for letters, I would recommend only doing this with students that you have actually been working with, or that somebody at the counseling center has actually been working with, or one that is dealing with a psychiatric emergency, such as a recent hospitalization. It is important to balance your advocacy role with ethical obligations around confidentiality, professional integrity, and institutional policy. These letters are essential tools in helping students navigate systems that may not inherently be responsive to episodic or chronic psychological distress, while also reinforcing the legitimacy of mental health as a core component of academic success. Additionally, if word gets out that all a student needs to do is ask you for a letter, you will be inundated with requests. The next topic I want to handle is how to handle medical leaves. One of the more sensitive and complex responsibilities you'll encounter is supporting students through the medical leave process, especially for mental health reasons. First, and very importantly, know your institution's policy. Every campus handles medical or psychological leaves a little bit differently, and you can actually have a role in how to define that. Some are going to require documentation from a treating clinician to return, while others route everything through the dean of students or a medical review committee. Your job is to understand how that process, inside and out, so that your team can guide students appropriately. Also, know how you can have input into shaping these policies should you see issues in the implementation of the policies or notice inequities in how the policies are applied. There may also be opportunities for you to help rework a process that is difficult to manage or lacks care and empathy for a student in real need. Second, make sure your staff knows the difference between supporting a student clinically and providing evaluative documentation. If a counselor has been working closely with a student, they may be well positioned to write a letter supporting a leave, but only if it's clinically appropriate and based on documented need. If not, it's okay to refer that student for a separate evaluation. Next, ensure the student understands what a leave actually means, both the benefits as well as the responsibilities. That includes timelines, reentry procedures, and access to ongoing care during their time away. Many schools have a policy where they cannot continue to work with the counseling center staff, and students need to understand that. It's important to collaborate with campus partners, like the Dean of Students, Disability Services or Accommodative Services, your behavioral intervention team, or academic advising to create a coordinated plan. Finally, and I am sure that this will not be an issue for you, but being compassionate is very important, but also being very clear. Medical leaves can be a lifeline for a student in crisis, but it is also a very structured process with institutional requirements. Helping students navigate this process with care and clarity is one of the most meaningful ways your center can promote well-being and academic success. So as I wrap up today, always know that there are hundreds of people that you can reach out to on the listserv to help guide you through these issues or any other issues you can encounter. The listserv, the conference, the group within AUCCCD is just a great group that's going to be there to support you. So just to remember, assistance is just an email away. Thank you.